Have you ever wondered how streamers have toys and interactions on streams? I'm talking things appearing, sounds playing, crazy camera effects. What if I told you there's a way of doing this and more absolutely free? And it's really simple to set up as well. Keep watching. My name's Danny and I stream over on twitch.tv/DannyVals. Today I have the absolute pleasure of introducing to you my good friend, Sammy. This video is going to cover what Sammy is and what it can do, how do we set it up, and creating our first buttons. Literally any Twitch or YouTube streamer can use this right away. You don't need to be an affiliate, you don't need to be a partner, so bring some interactivity to your stream today. And by the way, I'm uploading streaming guides all the time, so make sure you subscribe so you can learn more. If there's anything in particular you want to learn about, feel free to leave me a comment. So, what is SAMMI? Essentially, SAMMI is a tool for streamers that lets you perform actions inside and indeed outside of OBS, depending on certain things that happen in your stream. This could be, for instance, having a chat command where users could type in !chat and it just plays a sound to remind you to, well, look at the chat messages. Or perhaps if you're playing a game and your webcam is obscuring some vital information, your moderators could type in !hide cam to take your camera off the screen and bring it back 30 seconds later. One of my favorite things to use SAMMI for is when I get a raid, and this happens. There's a positive step forward. Andy! Oh my flipping! Oh, that made me jump out of my skin. Welcome raiders. It is so good to see you. Showing all the different webcams, playing the sound, and then returning to my game is all done automatically through SAMMI when I get a raid. Of course, there is a plethora of different tools out there for streamers to use to really enhance their streams and bring an extra layer of interactivity between a streamer and their audience. I use multiple myself when I stream, but what sets SAMMI apart from the others is the way it can work like a virtual stream deck. We'll go into that a little bit more later on. As for what SAMMI can do, loads. In OBS, it can show and hide sources, play audio, change settings in your filters, mute and unmute your microphone, change scenes, set text, move sources, basically anything that OBS can do, SAMMI can control it. Outside of OBS, it can fetch information about your stream, read and write files, move your mouse, press keyboard buttons, open up web pages, enable and disable channel point rewards, create polls and predictions, send chat messages, trigger ad breaks, make API requests. There is so much that this software can do. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. SAMMI is being constantly developed with new functionality added all the time. Plus, if you know JavaScript, you can write your own plugins and extensions, bringing in even more features. If that sounds good to you, let's get it installed. Unfortunately, Streamlabs OBS isn't supported, so if you want to use SAMMI, you'll need to use the regular version of OBS. If you don't have this installed, you might be interested in the Ultimate OBS Setup Guide, which you can access by clicking this card right here. Let's go over to the SAMMI website and get this thing downloaded and installed. As you'll see here, the website is sammi.solutions, and we want to click this blue download button right here. If we scroll down on the download page, you'll see under the required software, we have OBS Studio and OBS WebSocket. In this tutorial, we're using OBS version 29, so if you're using a different version, you may need to download the WebSocket. We're going to scroll up though, and we're going to press this red Download Now button. Here we can name our price. You can of course download this for free, but if you use this long term, please do consider supporting the authors. Here we're just going to click No Thanks, take me to the downloads, and we want to download the latest version here. Once the download is complete, just extract it into a directory that makes sense for you. One of the great things about SAMMI is that it's fully portable, meaning all configuration files are stored in the folder itself, just like when we install the portable version of OBS during the Ultimate OBS Setup Guide. Once that's extracted, we just need to double-click sammicore.exe. The first time you launch this, Windows may ask you if you want to allow it to access the internet, so make sure you press Allow. Once SAMMI opens, you should see something like this. We need to connect it to OBS, so let's go down to the bottom left and press OBS Connections. The IP that you see here is your local IP, is your local machine. So if you're running a multi-PC setup for streaming, make sure you put in the IP of the machine running OBS here. The default port is 4455 and the password is blank. So let's go over to OBS to make sure these details match up. With OBS open, we're going to want to go to Tools and WebSocket Server Settings. Here we want to make sure the WebSocket server is enabled, so make sure this box here is ticked. We can see here that the port matches up as it's 4455, but we do have a password. You can remove the password here if you wish, but for some extra security, we're going to keep it on. To see what password we've got, we can go into Show Connect Info. We can see that the server password is set here, so we can just press the copy button to add it to our clipboard. If we open SAMMI back up, we can simply paste in our password and then press connect. Down in the bottom left corner here, you'll see that there's now a green light next to main OBS. And if we were to go back into OBS and close off the WebSocket connection info, we can now see there's an additional line here in the connected WebSocket sessions. I'm going to close this off for now though, because we no longer need it. And then back in SAMMI, we want to make sure that auto connect is ticked, just to make sure we don't have to connect manually to OBS every single time we launch the application. Then we can just go ahead and click Save and Close, and now we're going to set up the SAMMI bridge. The SAMMI bridge is an HTML file that we embed inside of OBS. This allows certain SAMMI extensions to communicate with OBS freely. It also has some extra functionality, allowing us to test things like raids, bits, donations, and super chats. To set up the bridge, we just need to go into SAMMI bridge and copy full path. Then we can open OBS back up and go into Docs, Custom Browser Docs. Doc name, we'll call this SAMMI bridge, and the URL is the one on our clipboard. When we press apply, the bridge will then open and we can dock it into our OBS wherever we see fit. I'm going to place it just about here and extend it up a little bit. We close off the docs pane and you'll see down the bottom here we've got SAMMI core connected, and if we go back over to SAMMI, we can now see an additional blip next to the bridge. Next, we need to connect SAMMI to our streaming service. I'll show how to do Twitch first and then YouTube. So for Twitch, we can click into Twitch connections. I want to press link streamer account to tell SAMMI which Twitch account we want to control. By control, I mean any changes to channel points, banning users, starting predictions, etc. Twitch will then ask you if you want to allow SAMMI to have all this functionality. I know that it seems like a lot, but because SAMMI can do so much with OBS and with your Twitch account, it has to list each permission individually. Don't panic though, if you're concerned about any of them, just have a read and make sure you're happy. If you are, you can scroll right down to the bottom and you can press authorize. Once authorized, you should then see your Twitch account here in SAMMI, along with a list of all the different events that SAMMI is listing out for. If you don't want some of these listed out for, you can simply untick the box. Do bear in mind that if you're not a partner or affiliate, some of these may be grayed out already. You'll also see this edit rewards button, which is a really handy way of managing your channel point rewards. We won't go into it now, we'll go into it a bit later, but it's got some really cool functionality. Some people like to use a second Twitch account for bot duties, such as chat messages or moderation. If that's you, simply go down here and click Link Bot Account. Once again, Twitch will ask you if you want to let SAMMI do all these different actions in your account. If you're happy, scroll to the bottom and press Authorize. As I mentioned a moment ago, some of these options down here are grayed out because this account isn't an affiliate, so it doesn't have the same amount of power as my regular account. If you did want to have your bot account sending chat messages in your channel instead of your own account, make sure you press Join Chat under this name under the relevant account. Once you're happy with everything here, simply go down to Connect to Twitch and give it a click. You should then see these indicator lights down the bottom left change. Twitch Pub Sub is the connection to the servers that allow you to manage your account, and Twitch Chat is, well, chat. It's also worth making sure you click this Auto Connect to Twitch button, again, just so you don't have to do this manually every single time you launch SAMMI. If you're a YouTube streamer, simply go down here to YouTube connection, and we want to press Obtain a Token. Once again, if you do use SAMMI long term, do consider supporting the creator if you can. Here we'll click Sign in with Google, and we'll pick the account that we used to stream with. Now here it does ask if you want to continue signing in to Leorin board, but don't worry about this. This was just SAMMI's old name before a much needed rebrand. Clicking this will then ask if you're happy for SAMMI to manage your account, so you can just go ahead and press Allow. Then it's just a case of pressing Copy to Clipboard for your refresh token, go back into SAMMI, and paste in your refresh token here. Once you press the link button, it'll take a moment to establish that link, and then when it's complete, you'll see your YouTube channel up here. Click Done and you're done. Unlike Twitch and parts of the OBS connections, there are no indicator lights down in the bottom left for YouTube, so don't worry about that. If you can see your name here, you're connected. Next up, we're going to create our first deck. You can think of a deck as a collection of buttons, where each button has 0 or more actions. It's much like an Elgato Stream Deck, but with as many buttons as you'd like. In a general sense, it's a good rule of thumb to separate your decks by their function. What I mean by this is, if you want to have SAMMI do things based off of things said in chat, have a chat deck. If you want to have a separate list of things that are triggered by channel point rewards, have a channel point rewards deck. In this example though, we're going to be using just a single deck just to show the various different things that SAMMI can do. So to create a deck, we can simply press this button here, or press Add New Deck up on the top left. Once you do so, you'll see a new deck created. You can then double click into it to change some options. Here we have the name of our deck, which we'll just call Example Deck. We can change the color by pressing this square here. I'll just go for a vaguely green color. We can set the size of the deck, which we're going to leave as 10 by 10 for now. And also you can set a background image if you wanted to. If we go over here and press save though, we'll now see our new example deck with its updated title and updated color here in the preview. Next up, we're going to create our first buttons. Now, buttons can be functional, they can be decorative, or they can be both. As we're using a single deck in this example, I'm going to create a button now that's going to serve as a header. To create a button, we simply need to go into our deck, and then in any blank space here, we can either double click, or we can right click and press Create Button. With your button created, we can simply right click it and press Edit Appearance, and then we have a few different options for customizing our button. Here we can add a label, so this is the text that appears on the button. I'm going to call it chat commands. We can choose a color if we like, so I'm going to set it to black, or if you prefer, you can actually set a background image by clicking up here. We're going to press save, and you'll see it's now updated on the deck. Next, we're going to create a button which, when activated, will play a sound to remind me to look at chat. We can create a new button by right-clicking and pressing Create Button, or you can just double-click some empty space. Once you've created a button, you can right-click it and press Edit Appearance. Here we can add a label. Now I like to label my buttons with the command that's going to activate the buttons when it comes to chat commands, so I'm just going to call this !chat. Just like when we created our decks, we can choose an optional color if we want to, or add a background image. I'm going to set this as is though and press save, and we'll see it update here on the deck. We can now double click into the button to add some actions. So pressing here on the plus button, you'll see a whole list of different actions that you have available to you. I strongly recommend taking some time to go through each of them and see some of the things that SAMMI can do. Here we simply want to play a sound, so we're going to go into Utilities, Play Sound Effect. We can then press this folder button here in order to add our sound. Now it's worth noting here that SAMMI only supports OGG files, so make sure your extension is .ogg. If your audio file is not an OGG file, there's some free software you can use to convert it. I recommend using Audacity, and there's a link down in the description for you. Once you've got your file, double click it to select it, and we can press this play button here to preview it. We can then set the volume if we need to, so I shall increase that up to about 80%. We can also choose to save the sound ID. This is just a reference to what the sound is in other parts of SAMMI. We're not going to need this, so we're not going to add it. And we can also set a delay. We want this to fire as soon as the button is activated, so we'll leave this set as 0 milliseconds. Once you're happy, press OK. In order to make the sound actually play when someone types in !chat, we need to add a trigger. So you can go into the button, right-click it, and press Edit Triggers. Here we can define one or more conditions that have to be true in order for the button to trigger. So we can press this plus button here, and we can say YouTube chat or Twitch chat. Here we can define exactly what message we're listening out for in order to fire the button. I want it to only fire when users type in !chat exactly, so I'm going to remove this wildcard and type in !chat. If you're not familiar with wildcards, it basically means one or more characters. So if we wanted to fire the button to any message that ends in !chat, we could do *!chat. If we did !chat**, it would trigger for any message which starts !chat and then has any amount of characters after it. And of course, if you use a wildcard on either side, so *chat*, the button would fire if you have any message where !chat is sandwiched between other words. If you click Allow Empty Wildcard, it changes your wildcard from being 1 or more characters to 0 or more characters. So this means if we have this ticked and our trigger message is *!chat*, the button would fire when !chat was used anywhere in the message, regardless of where. By default, chat triggers are case insensitive, but if you wanted to respect case sensitivity, simply click this button here. In terms of permissions for exactly who can trigger this command, we can actually set an individual username if we wanted to by adding it in this username field here. This is good for individual walk-on sounds per user, where only one user has access to a particular sound command. If you wanted to make a command exclusive to you only, you can click this broadcaster button here, and if you wanted to make it available for mods or VIPs, you simply click mod or VIP as appropriate. If you wanted to have it work for both mod and VIP, you'd actually need to duplicate the trigger by pressing this button right here, and setting the buttons accordingly. These checkboxes on the side here are cumulative in terms of their permissions, so if we ticked both sub and founder, this would only trigger if it's triggered by a moderator who happens to be a sub who is also one of the first 10 subscribers your channel ever had. For a "hey, please look at chat" kind of button, we don't want the permissions to be so restrictive, so we can untick these buttons here, untick mod, and then press delete up here. So now this is available to anyone who wants to use it. Once you're happy with that, we can press save on the triggers, press save on the deck, and then when we go to our Twitch chat, we can type in !chat and we'll hear the sound play. So we're going to go over to chat here, !chat. Hey! There we go. In its current state, there's no cooldown on this button, meaning if somebody went into chat and typed in !chat again and again and again, that sound would play repeatedly. If you don't want this, we can add a timeout to prevent this. So double click into the button, and we can press this plus here, and we're just going to search for timeout. Here we have wait for timeout. A timeout effectively puts the button into a running state until the timer has expired. So if we set this to 30,000, users will have to wait 30 seconds before being able to run that button again. We can then press OK, save our deck, and then when we go back into our Twitch chat, if we type in !chat, the sound will play. If we say chat again, it'll say we can't do that because of 30-second spam protection. So if we say a different message, it won't play. !chat again, the button doesn't play. Back over on SAMMI, we can click into active buttons to see what buttons are currently running. Here we see the ID of our button and the title chat, and we see it's in a waiting state because the timeout is still waiting to expire. Because the timeout hasn't expired, it means we can't use that button again, effectively preventing it from being spammed. Now you'll see up here with the button ID, this is actually something we can define ourselves. If we press done here, go into our example deck and click our chat button, you'll see it has ID 2. Generally speaking, I'd recommend setting the ID to something that represents the deck that you're using. So as using example deck here, we might set this to ex_chat. For the purpose of today's tutorial though, we're going to leave it as is. Of course, as mentioned earlier, there are multiple different things that can trigger actions in SAMMI, including channel points. So let's go ahead and set up a channel point reward now over in SAMMI. So if we go back down into our Twitch connections, we can see there's this edit rewards button here. If we click into it, it'll load up all the different channel point rewards that you have. You'll notice on the left here, we've got some reds and some greens, where red of course indicates things being turned off and green indicates things being turned on. You may also notice these darker colored ones here. These indicate channel point rewards that SAMMI doesn't have access to. SAMMI can only actually access channel point rewards that it itself has created. We're going to get SAMMI to create a new reward for us to test with, so we're going to press the create reward button, and we'll simply call it I feel dizzy. We'll leave the description blank just to pique a bit of curiosity and maybe tempt people to use it sometime in the future. And just while we're testing here, we're going to set the cost to 9999999999. This is basically to make sure that if we forget about turning off this reward later, we're not going to have somebody accidentally redeem a broken reward. If we wanted to limit how many times a user could redeem this in a stream, or indeed how many times it could be redeemed in a stream at all, we can configure it here and here. And if you wanted to set a cooldown, you can tick this box and set how many days, hours, minutes, or seconds you want between each activation. For now though, we're going to turn this off because we don't need it. We also don't need any user input, so we'll leave this unticked. For skip rewards queue, we're going to tick this. This means that when somebody redeems it, it's not going to appear in your Twitch rewards queue and you'll have to remember to clear it out later. If you forget about that, it can look kind of disastrous. Finally, if we wanted to set a custom color for our button, we can simply click this box here and pick a color. It's worth noting that SAMMI currently doesn't have the ability to set a custom icon for your reward, so if you wanted a custom icon, you have to set it up through Twitch. Once you're happy with everything, you can press save on the color picker, save on the channel point reward, and you'll see your new channel point reward at the top here. You'll see here if we use this button to turn it on and off, it'll be automatically updated in Twitch. We're going to go ahead and press done on the channel points and done on the Twitch connections. It'll give this prompt to remind you to make sure your Twitch account is linked. We can press yes, then go into our example deck, and we're going to create our channel point rewards button. We're going to go right click our chat commands button and press copy button, and then a few spaces below the chat, we're going to press right click, paste button. Here we can right click the button once again, press edit appearance, and we're going to change this to be a channel points header. We can then press save on our button, and then beneath the channel points header, we double click to create a new button, and then double click that button to add some actions. Here we want to press the plus button. We're going to go to OBS commands and scroll all the way to the bottom for motion source rotation. What a motion command does is it changes the value from A to B incrementally over a certain time frame. So here we're going to say rotation start at 0 and rotation end at 720, and then set the duration to be 1 second. What this will do is it'll change the rotation of a source from 0 to 720 degrees, so 2 full spins, and it'll take 1 second to do that. Under scene name, we're going to select our webcam scene. So I'm going to go here into our webcam, and our source name will be our recording webcam. You'll notice when we go into OBS, if we go down to our webcam scene, and we then test our button, I spin around in the corner in a kind of crazy way. We obviously don't want that, so to fix it, we can right click our recording webcam source, go into transform, edit transform, and we'll set the positional alignment to center. Once we move me back into position, that's 2 Danny's, it's kind of crazy. Once we do that, and we test the button again, I spin around in the center. We can then press OK, and then we need to set up our label and our trigger. So I can right click this button and say edit appearance, and I'll set the label to I feel dizzy, and press save. And for the trigger, we can right click it, go to edit triggers, press this plus button here, and we're going to want a Twitch channel points trigger. Redemption name is going to be I feel dizzy, and that's it. That's all you need to do. Now when a user redeems that through the channel points, your webcam will spin around twice. The last couple of buttons we're going to create are around automations. These are going to be buttons that are triggered not by people in your stream, but by events happening outside of stream. This could be a change in OBS, a hotkey being pressed, or more. I want to set it so that when we press go live in OBS, we show a holding image for a few seconds, then automatically transition to a starting scene. This is just to make sure that when we go live, we're not broadcasting the wrong thing by mistake. Let me show you how it's done in SAMMI. I'm going to go ahead and right click our channel point scene and press copy so we can make a new header. I'll paste it down here, press paste button, edit the appearance, and we're going to call this one automations. We can then press save, and beneath the automations button, we can double click to create a new button. Rather than going in and creating some action straight away, we're actually going to set up the trigger first. So we can right click and press edit triggers. Pressing this plus button here, we're going to want to set up an OBS trigger. Under the update type, we'll press this little down arrow, and we need to pick what version of the OBS WebSocket we're using. Because we're on OBS 29, we'll be using OBS WebSocket 5, but if you're in an older version of OBS, you might want to use WebSocket 4.9 instead. We're going to select OBS WebSocket version 5 and scroll all the way to the bottom of this list. I'm going to pick Stream State Changed. This will fire the button on the stream starting and stopping. We can go ahead and press save, and then we'll add a label to our button by pressing Edit Appearance, and we'll set this to Starting Scenes with a little line break between those two words. Press save, and then we can add some actions. We're going to press this plus button here, and we'll say OBS commands, switch scene. Here we'll pick the first scene that we're going to want to switch to. So this is going to be our holding image, which I've created ahead of time as B holding logo. We can then duplicate this by pressing the button right here, and then pressing the paste button. We can then set the next scene we want to switch to, which will be our starting scene. We're going to add a delay of 3 seconds, so which is 3000 milliseconds. So we're going to switch to the holding logo when the stream starts, and then 3 seconds later, switch to the starting scene. Right now, this button would run when stream is both starting and stopping, which we don't want. We only want to switch the scenes when we're starting a stream. So in order to figure out if OBS is starting a stream, we need to use a variable. If you've not used variables before, it may seem a bit daunting, but I promise you it's not as bad as it might seem. So what we need to do is take the state from OBS and save it into a variable. So to do that, we're going to press plus, numbers, text, and variables, and we're going to say trigger pull data. This is going to put the data from OBS when we trigger the button into a variable which we will call OBS info with a capital I. We then want to check if OBS is starting a stream rather than ending a stream, and we can do this with a simple if statement. So press this plus button here, numbers, text, and variables, and we want an if statement. Here we want to look at the different OBS info returned in this variable above, and say if the output state is starting a stream, take some action. So we can say OBS info dot output state. If that is equal to OBS WebSocket output starting, take some kind of action. Because the value we've put here is a literal value rather than a variable, we need to put it in double quotes, like so. Of course, if you wanted to take some action depending on if stream is ending, you change the word starting here to stopping instead. I've put both of these down in the description so you can copy and paste easily. Then it's just a case of taking our scene switching actions and moving them into the if block. So I can press this button here and this button here, and then simply drag into the if. You'll see when it goes expanded like that, that means you're dropping into the if block. Now it's worth bearing in mind, because we created the trigger pull data and the if statement actions after the scene switch starting action, that had a delay of 3000 milliseconds, and so these have a delay of 3000 milliseconds. To remove that though, you simply highlight the text and press 0. And now both of these actions will run as soon as the button is triggered. Then we can just press OK, and the button is saved. The last button we're going to create today is also around automations. We want to make sure that our microphone is muted if we're on certain scenes. So to do this, we need to create a button. So let's double click some blank space, right click, edit appearance, and we'll set the label to be AFK mic mute. Press save, and then we can double click into the button. What we need to do is find out what the current scene is in OBS. If it's the BRB scene or the starting scene, we want to mute our microphone. If it's any other scene, we want to unmute our microphone. One handy tool that SAMMI gives us is the variable view. So we can go down here and press open variable window, and you'll see there are a few different options here. Up top is global variable. These are variables which are available to the whole of SAMMI, and in these individual ID ones, these are variables that are scoped to just an individual button. We're going to go into the global variable though, go into main, and we have some information here that SAMMI has access to, including the current scene in OBS. We want to reference this global variable and find out what the scene is, so we're going to go over here and press this backwards S to copy the path. If that doesn't make sense, don't worry, it will very shortly. We're going to press done, and we're going to create a new if statement. So we'll say plus, numbers, text, and variables, if statement. Here we want to say if the current scene is X, do Y. So as we have this on our clipboard, we're going to say if global main current scene is dash B dash BRB for our broadcast scene, which is a BRB scene, we want to take some kind of action. We also want to take this action if we're on the starting scene. So to do that, we can press this plus button here and say, or the current scene is the starting scene. You'll notice that I've wrapped these between double quotes. This is just to say this is an exact string that we're looking for, an exact piece of text and not a variable. In order to mute our microphone in SAMMI, we need to add the relevant action. So you can press plus, OBS commands, I want to say source mute. The source name, we'll press this down arrow here and we'll select our microphone. I will tick the mute box. Then it's just a case of dragging the action into the if block. So now we're saying if the current scene is BRB or starting, mute the microphone. We then press this button here to copy the action, paste it once again, and then we'll drag it down into the else section, and we'll say unmute. So now this if block reads, if the current scene is BRB or starting, mute the microphone. If it's any other scene at all, unmute the microphone. In order to make sure this button runs when we switch a scene, we need to add a trigger. So we can press OK, right-click our button, go into Edit Triggers, and press this plus button here. We can then go into OBS Trigger, set the update type to the relevant WebSocket version. Here we're using WebSocket 5, and we will say, trigger this button when the scene transition has ended. Then we just press save again, and then go to OBS to test. Now, notice just down here, our microphone is currently not muted, but if we go into the BRB scene, the microphone gets muted. If we switch back to in-game, the microphone automatically unmutes. If we go into the starting scene, we get muted once again. In order to test our automation around our starting scenes, we need to go live, or so you'd think. If you're a Twitch streamer, you can enable bandwidth test mode. This means that when you go live, you're actually pushing up to the Twitch test servers instead of the live servers, so you don't actually get broadcasted out to your audience. To do this, you simply need to press Settings, and then you can go into Stream, Enable Bandwidth Test Mode. Now if we press OK, and we press Start Streaming, you'll see this little warning here saying, hey, are you sure you want to not actually go live? Once we press yes, you can see holding logo, and then 3 seconds later, we're on our starting scene, and the microphone gets automatically muted. Nice. Finally, one of my absolute favorite features of SAMMI, and why I recommend SAMMI to any streamer who wants to take more control over their stream, is the SAMMI Panel, or as I like to call it, the completely free Stream Deck. Now, we've been working with this concept of buttons, and buttons usually get pressed, right? Well, using SAMMI Panel and a smartphone or a tablet or even our PC, we can physically press the buttons on our decks. Let's show you how. Back over on SAMMI, we can click into SAMMI Panel and then press Open Panel Web. You'll then get this red box asking you to connect to a SAMMI instance. Now, if you're running this from your PC, you can leave the IP as is, but if you're using a smartphone or a tablet, you need to set this IP here to the IP of your local machine. To get that IP, we can simply go back into SAMMI, click SAMMI Panel, and then press Get LAN IP. From here, we can open up a browser on our phone or tablet and go to sammipanel.solutions. From here, we then replace the IP from the default to the IP of the machine running SAMMI. So in my case, it is 192.168.0.34. We're then going to want to press Keep Awake to make sure that our phone or tablet doesn't turn off whilst we're using SAMMI, and then we can press Connect. You should then see the box go green, indicating a successful connection. If you're having issues connecting, you may want to check the password and the port. We can do this by going back into SAMMI, clicking onto Settings, and then here under SAMMI Panel Settings, you'll have the port and an optional password. Here we're simply going to select our example deck and click Select Deck. You'll then see the deck we've created along with all the buttons that we've added. It looks a bit of a mess and it's kind of hard to decipher on a phone or a tablet, so let's improve that. We can simply go back into SAMMI and double click on our example deck and then change the width to 2 and the height will be 8. Now, as soon as we click away, you'll see the changes made in SAMMI, but to see them on your phone, you'll need to press the save button here. Doing so, the changes are immediate. We did want to use our black buttons as headers, so we can simply go back into our deck, select one of our header buttons, and then drag across to resize it. Repeat this for each of your buttons, and then we can press save, and it looks a lot better. If you wanted to, we can of course resize the action buttons as well, not just the header buttons, and to do that it's the exact same thing. You go into the deck, you select a button, and you resize as you see fit. One of the great advantages of a SAMMI deck rather than a Stream Deck is if you run out of room, you can just increase the deck size and add more buttons. Let's go ahead and use SAMMI Panel to physically test our buttons. So you'll see here I have my chat button and my I feel dizzy button. Once I press the chat button, you'll see the button will darken to indicate that it is in its timeout state. For the I feel dizzy button, we press it, we see this clockwise wipe motion to show that the button is active, and when it's finished running, we can press the button again, and it runs again. Sadly, for the automation section, we can't really use SAMMI Panel to test these buttons. The reason being, the starting scenes button has an if block where we check the status of OBS, and if it's currently starting up a stream, then it takes the action. For the AFK mic mute button, it checks what the current scene is and then takes an action. We can kind of check the AFK mic mute button by going into our just chatting scene manually, muting our microphone, and then moving the mouse away, of course, and then we press the AFK mic mute button. What happens is it checks to see if the scene is currently the BRB scene or the starting scene, realizes it's not, and then it unmutes the microphone. One thing I strongly recommend is setting up an admin deck. This is for the sorts of things you want to do on your stream that involve OBS, but you don't want to have to switch to OBS every single time in order to do them. So this could be, for instance, setting up a deck that you have in front of you at all times that allows you to quickly switch between scenes, or maybe quickly hide and show your webcam, or maybe mute and unmute your microphone. What you might want to do is what I have here is my save replay button, where at the push of a single button, I can save the last 60 seconds of my stream. And that's pretty much it. SAMMI is so powerful, particularly around automations, and there's loads of things you can do with it. For instance, you might want to have it so that only certain channel point rewards are available on a certain day of the week, or maybe if you switch to a certain scene, an ad break will run. One thing that I use SAMMI for is my pre-live checklist. On OBS, I've got a scene dedicated to things I need to do before I stream, and as I do them, I tick them off, meaning I disable those sources. With SAMMI, what I can do once I've ended a stream is switch back to the scene and re-enable all those sources. It's really good. The amount of things you can do with SAMMI is virtually endless, so I'd say have an experiment, have a play, and see what we can come up with. They have a fantastic doc site as well over at sammi.solutions/docs, and everything's broken down into really simple, easy to understand steps. If you found anything in this video helpful, leave me a like, and be sure to let me know in the comments what you're most excited about doing with SAMMI. I'd love to hear your ideas, and of course if you get stuck, feel free to join my Discord and ask some questions. There's a link down in the description. If you want to watch another video, right here. I've been Danny. I'll catch you on the next one.